Hello boys and girls, Mr. Jones here, your friendly guidance counselor, and I'm here to read you chapter 3 of Life According to Og the Frog. The long, long weekend. Sunrise in the swamp. Is there a better time of day? The bats, owls, and scary night creatures are in bed. The bullfrogs are still silent, and the dragonflies are just opening their wings. They're the slowest before they limber up, so if I can only get into the perfect position, I'll have a lovely breakfast. Class, may I have your attention? That's Mrs. Bisbane's voice. I was paying attention to my plan to catch a tasty dragonfly, but back to reality. I'll listen up, but all she says is something about lunch in the cafeteria, so I'll go back to daydreaming about that dragonfly. When the Tads come back from lunch, some of the students stop by our table. Hi, Og, it's Art, the daydreaming boy. You know what? Sometimes I forget to pay attention in class and stare out the window. Now that you're here, sometimes I watch you, he said. I watch you too, I tell him. He smiles and says, I'm funny. I notice Garth in front of Humphrey's cage, and he looks as happy as a fish with a wiggly worm in his mouth. Today is Friday, he tells the hamster, my big day. Humphrey squeaks happily, so I guess it's a big day for him too. Soon Tabitha stops by my tank. She looks as unhappy as a worm caught by a fish. Hi, Og, she says. How do you like room 26? Tabitha has hardly spoken to anyone in class, so I'm surprised she's talking to me. It's not bad, I answer honestly. When she hears my boing, she breaks into a big smile. I think that must be the first time I've seen her smile. Boing, boing. I repeat it, hopping up and down. You're so funny, Tabitha says. Don't you think so, Smiley? She looks to make sure no one is around, then reaches in her pocket and pulls out a small worn toy bear with a big smile sewn on his face. Smiley, meet Og. It's not a real bear, thank goodness. Real bears are even scarier than snapping turtles. So I say, hi, Smiley. Tabitha giggles. Did you hear that, Smiley? That's how Og talks. Boing. She giggles again, and that makes me hoppy. Mrs. Bisbane calls the students back to their tables, but I feel proud that I made Tabitha smile. I'm in a good mood until the end of the day. That's when Humphrey starts to squeak excitedly, and Garth is excited too. Before long, Garth, with his pal AJ's help, throws a blanket over Humphrey's cage and carries him out of the room 26. Mrs. Bisbane smiles as she watches them. I'm in shock. Are they kidding? Are they kidnapping Humphrey or hamster napping him? If they are, Garth and AJ sure look happy about it, and so does Mrs. Bisbane. It doesn't make sense. I hear some sweet squeaks from the cage as the boys leave room 26. What is Humphrey trying to tell me? Maybe it's goodbye forever. Poor little furry guy. Those boys seem so nice until now. Then Mrs. Bisbane leaves too, and I'm all alone in room 26. When I was in room 27 with George, I used to wish with all my heart that I could be alone. But this is more alone than I've ever been. What can I do? I'm stuck in a tank with a lid on it. It's a nice tank with a large water bowl, a few plants, and a dry place with rocks, but it's a lot smaller than the swamp. There's nothing I can do to help Humphrey, the missing hamster, so I do the only thing I can think of. I take a nap. I wake up when Aldo comes in to clean. He doesn't seem concerned that the hamster's missing. He smiles and talks while he sweeps and dusts. Watching Aldo is more entertaining than watching a hawk with a poor sense of direction. I hold my breath hoping, then he tosses me another cricket. I dine like the king of the swamp. But once Aldo leaves, room 26 is even quieter than on weeknights. I'm almost hoppy for the loud ticking of the clock, although I hardly noticed it anymore. So I do what I did on lonely nights in the swamp. I sing, oh, give me a home where amphibians roam, where there's crayfish and turtles and fish, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the insects are simply delish. Home, home in the swamp, where the crayfish and turtles and fish, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the insects are simply delish. I sing all the songs I can think of, and then it's quiet again, except for the clock. With nothing better to do, I decide to spend a little time watching it because it keeps changing. A small arrow moves in a slow circle, number by number, and a longer one moves around the circle faster. After a while, I get it. The numbers stand for the hours. This might be very useful, especially in a classroom where I can't always count on watching the sun to tell what time of day it is. Well, the faster arrow must show the minutes, and there's a tiny arrow that races around the circle for the seconds. Humans must be smarter than I. The hour arrow moves completely around the clock several times as the weekend continues. That's a long time, but at least I have clean water, and I'm used to not eating on a regular schedule like humans and hamsters do. It would be easy to sit on a rock or float on the water all day, but I would get soft and flabby. After all, in the swamp, I was constantly leaping and hopping and moving from dry land to water and back. I decided to start an exercise program. First, I hop into my water bowl and splash as hard and as fast as I can. Then, instead of resting in my rock, I do jumping jacks. That's an exercise that's named for a friend of mine back in the swamp. Push-ups and then big leaps. Each time I leap a little higher than the time before. And when I look up at the clock, a lot of time has passed. I'm so tired I fall right to sleep. Before I know it, the door to room 26 opens and Mrs. Bisbane walks in. "Og," she says, rushing to my tank, "you're okay. Miss Loomis told me it was fine for you to stay here alone, but I was worried all weekend about you." "I'm fine," I tell her, hoping she'll understand. "You certainly look well," she says. "Well, I would think so. My skin is beautifully moist and my muscles are in great shape for leaping." Then the door opens again. Garth and AJ are back with Humphrey's cage. I guess he wasn't kidnapped after all. Or if he was, they got tired of his squeaking and brought him back. Now once Humphrey and his cage are back in place, he starts right in. Squeak, 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 squeak. He seems to be happy to be back. I decide to relax in the water, and after a while the little fellow quiets down. Everything seems back to normal until the girl named Gail starts giggling. Then she keeps looking at my tank and laughing. Turns out that someone has taped a funny note to my tank. I can't see it, but Gail can't stop giggling about it. The somebody who put it there is Kirk, who likes to make people laugh. He tells jokes a lot, like this one. "What kind of fly has a frog in his throat?" "A horse fly." I chuckled so hard I almost croaked. Mrs. Brisbane takes the note off my tank, but I still can't see it. It has something to do with kissing a frog. I wish I could tell the big tads that kissing is something we frogs don't do. I haven't been in room 26 for long, but I think that Kirk likes to call attention to himself. In the swamp, that's not always a smart thing to do. For instance, there are some very colorful and showy moths and dragonflies who love to swoop gracefully over the water. They're pretty, but I must say the showiest insects don't last very long. But the toads, who are dull and plain, blend in with the mud and muck and hardly get noticed. Despite the interruption, our teacher gets class back on track quickly. While I was hoping to learn more about the life cycle of frogs, Mrs. Bisbane starts the day with something brand new that she calls a spelling test. The good news is I learned some new words. I like the sound of the word jewel. She moves right from the test to the Big Tad's poems. When the students read what they've written, I understand most of the words. Amazingly, frog is repeated a lot. So is og, and og is a part of frog. The poems are all great, but maybe Gail's is my favorite. Og is a green frog, and he's our class pet. I am? I never thought of myself as a pet before. I've always been a very independent frog. Being Gail, she stops to giggle before she reads on. Of all the frogs I've ever seen, he's the best one yet. Wow, that makes me want to giggle. Richie's poem is very clever too. Og the frog is not a dog or even a hog. He's an amphibian, but not from the Caribbean. Richie stumbles over amphibian and Caribbean, and the teacher makes him repeat them. That happens a lot with Richie. Then she calls on Tabitha to read her poem. Tabitha looks scared, and she pats her pocket where she keeps Smiley hidden. Everybody's waiting to hear, but so far she hasn't opened her mouth. Go on, it'll be fine. Tabitha's startled, but she starts reading her poem. She goes so fast it's hard to hear it at all. People think bears are mean, but they've never seen Smiley. He doesn't growl or make you sad. He wouldn't even be bad, Smiley. I don't care what people say, and he helps me get through the day, Smiley. There's something about Tabitha in her poem. I don't understand it, though. I don't understand why some of the other big tads roll their eyes when they hear what Tabitha says. What a baby, I hear someone whisper. After everybody shares a poem, Humphrey's sad squeaks make me feel a little weird. Humphrey has been around longer than I have, but there aren't any poems about him. Then Seth reminds him why. We all still love you too, Humphrey, but we can't think of any words that rhyme with Humphrey or hamster. You understand? Humphrey squeaks back. I'm not sure what he's saying, but I can guess that he feels a little left out. That's the way I felt back in the swamp when my best pal, Jumpin' Jack, played leapfrog with somebody else. Your name doesn't rhyme, but mine does, I try to explain to Humphrey. I don't want him to be upset. He squeaks back at me, but who knows what he's saying? I certainly don't.